The panel's topic is Bangladesh Data Center Outlook. So let's get started with the first set of introductions. Kindly join me in welcoming the experts and the proficient members of the Bangladesh Data Center community. Moderating the panel, for moderating the panel, we have Mr. Iqbal Ahmed, F. Hasan. He's the founder and the CEO of Divine IT Limited. Mr. Russell, with his IT entrepreneurial tour de force, was able to introduce infotech in every walk of his life. For the past 20 years, he has been putting real and great efforts to establish and run ventures like developing ERP solutions, unified messaging system, data center security, and managed services. Welcome on board, Mr. Russell. We are really glad to have you on the panel.
Thank you.
On the panel seat, we have Mr. Ruslan Nasir. He is the director of Croatia Limited. Ruslan holds a master's degree in business administration from Rotman School of Management, University of Toronto, and a bachelor's degree from Carleton University, Canada. He's a prominent entrepreneur who is also involved in diverse range of businesses, including ceramic manufacturing, construction, real estate, food chain, and banking. That's a very long list. Mr. Ruslan, welcome to Digital Week. We're really glad you could make it. On the other panel seat, we have Mr. Ahmed Ismani. He's a managing director of City Limited. Mr. Ahmed always had a love for technology and how it enables the business and the society. It is his love that actually resulted him in personal capacity to establish City in 2008 as the founder and the owner. So, Mr. Ahmed, welcome to the panel. We are really honored to have you here.
Thank you.
And as our final panelist, we have Mr. Shumon Ahmed Sabir. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Fiber at Home. He's one of the most senior persons in Sri Lanka, senior personality in Sri Lanka who people look up to. He has been at the center of Bangladesh's internet community for the past 25 years, leading the establishment for Bangladesh XP, CRT, NOG, data center, and a lot more. He's also serving as executive council member of Information Center. Welcome on board, Mr. Shumon. We are really honored to have you here.
Thank you.
Over to you, Mr. Russell. Let a very, very, very interactive and fruitful session begin. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Athira. And thank you everyone. Imad bhai, assalamu alaikum. Ruslan bhai, ami apnake dekhi nai. This is my first time I see you. I know your name and all the details. Shumon bhai, you are the mentor of me, but I have never met. All of you, I may not be able to speak here. So thank you, Bikonoda and all others to join. I welcome everyone to W.Media Data Center event and Cloud Cybersecurity and Data Center event. And I'm going to moderate this session on the data center. So I have very special guests with me, and Athira already introduced to all of you. We have Mr. Ahmed Ismani from City. We have Mr. Ruslan from Croatia. We have Shumon Ahmed Sabir from Fiber at Home. At the starting of the thing, I'd like to say something to all of you. While we were working in our early age, back in 1996 to 2000, I was working in a city called Sylhet. We have a big city over there. So I had an internet company up to 2002-03. We were having initially 128 kbps internet over the VSET, and we are serving the whole city by that internet. Now the Bangladesh has grown up with its economy as well as the internet connectivity. As Bikonoda said, it is up to the 80% of the union level, and we have few unions left to connect. Now we have huge number of data growth. So for the economy is growing in the country, the data is growing in the country, and the huge number of digitalization attempt are coming from the government as well as the private sector, industries, all other part of the country. So I'll start with Shumon bhai. Shumon bhai, if you explain the history of the internet connection in the country as you are the primary contributor, as I know from last 20 years, you're serving to this industry, and this connection CME 4 and 5 should not be coming here into the Bangladesh without your support. So please explain the thing to all of us. The people are very limited to see you and meet you, and today it is time to tell the story of the country.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you, W.Media, to arranging such a wonderful event in the month of Ramadan and in the weekend. So, yeah, indeed, actually, I'm very lucky and fortunate to get into the industry just from the beginning. So, the primary, I think the partial internet service, I would rather say that offline email service started in Bangladesh. There's the first exposure to email back in 1994. And through internet, in the form of VSAT, you were mentioning 128 kbps. It started as a form of 64 kbps VSAT link back in 1996. If I recall correctly, 4th May, the first VSAT established in Bangladesh. And we got the opportunity to use internet in this country in a dial-up format. And the ISN, the first country, started. And subsequently, in 2, 3, 4 months, 3, 4 companies also join in. And that was the only option, using dial-up modem. I can still remember the sound of that modem. And we used to see in the dream even, because that was the challenge to use the analog telephone lines and give people internet connectivity. So that is where we started in 1996. And today, actually, probably we have a 3.4 terabits of bandwidth coming in Bangladesh. So that's the journey of around 23 years of journey. We are here. And that time, there was no other infrastructure but than dial-up connectivity. So today's network, the speed was unthinkable. And even if someone sends an email from one person to another person, if it's a different ISP, it usually traverses the world, actually. Going to Singapore or US and coming back again, latency of around 500 to 600 milliseconds from each of us. So to reduce that time we thought that we should have some local connectivity. And in 2004, we done it in the form of establishing BDIX, that pairing locally. So that dramatically reduced connectivity among the ISPs in Bangladesh. And from 500 milliseconds, it came down to 10 milliseconds for the local connectivity. Now, I consider it one of the major breakthrough actually that time. And true major changes came in Bangladesh internet in 2006 when CME 4 subband cable landed. And it started operational and started providing internet bandwidth to the ISPs. And another thing I must mention, another milestone, that from VSAT to cable-based internet, broadband internet in the form of DSL, that we started in Bangladesh around 2002-3 timeline. And nowadays you see a lot of fiber hanging in the streets. And that time we used to see a lot of copper wire hanging in the streets, black, blue, green, and also you started to notice some unwanted incident like fire, like the electrification in the DSL cable and burnout of PC and this kind of thing. And soon, quickly actually, the time when CME4 landed, in the meantime, actually, we also moved from copper to fiber. And I must mention that Bangladesh, one of the very early adopters of fiber optic cable for the broadband connectivity, because we didn't have any good copper infrastructure, underground infrastructure, which the other countries have leveraged in the form of DSL. It was not here. So we are the early adopters of fiber. Though it's overhead fiber, yes, not that reliable like the underground FTTH network, but still that was far superior than actually the DSL connectivity. And after the CME4 came, with one STM1 link, that is 150 Mbps in the first month, but it actually started to grow rapidly that time. And at the end of the year, it turns out to be STM16 kind of link. So STM4. So every year we see that more than 100 to 200% growth in the early days of the internet in Bangladesh. And that growth is still continuing. And the broadband internet now become touching almost 1 crore people in Bangladesh. And I missed another part, that along with this cable-based development, mobile internet also actually evolved gradually. That in 2009 we have got 3G. That was a little bit. 2G I will not mention. That was really not comparable in terms of internet, but we used it for a long time. After 3G came in, almost anywhere in Bangladesh, people are able to get some sort of better internet, I would say, though not like broadband. And in 2018, after 4G came in Bangladesh, so there is another major shift. And now actually we are hoping to see 5G coming up in next year probably. So that will be another major development in the wireless internet in Bangladesh. So these are the infrastructure side of development I was talking about. But in parallel, many other development also happen. That banks also become online. So digital services started to evolve. Now the mobile money is become one of the major players in Bangladesh based on this internet infrastructure. E-commerce evolved gradually, and especially during the pandemic, it reached to I would say that in a certain level that we can really actually consider it as strong business force. Mr. Bikar, the earlier presenter, talked about that Facebook commerce and other format of e-commerce also evolved in Bangladesh. So that is another area of development. And another thing that the changes of the global changes, that the storage of data from the individual office premises to start migrate to the data center. And the pioneer I can see sitting in the panel with me in 2010, if I'm not wrong, the year, Colo City started first, I think, open data center infrastructure in Bangladesh. Earlier to that, there were data centers made by the telcos or the banks, but that was for their own consumption, not for the public use. So eventually Colo City, Colo Asia, and many other data centers came in. And I am also very proud to be a part of a new data center we call Felicity IDC in High Tech Park. It's a Tier 3 certified data center in operation now. So there is another area of development, and we now see the shift of mindset from the small to medium enterprises to have their data secured in a secured location like data center. So there's another area of development. Probably that is what we'll be discussing today in more detail. So I think I do not want to be prolonged, but definitely we can discuss further. So I will stop now. So far from the beginning till now, the overall infrastructure development in the internet area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shuman Bhai. Thank you. That was wonderful. Actually, there are so many information was organized, and I even don't know. And now, really, Bangladesh is growing highly in terms of digitization, connectivity, and all others. But I want to remember a few things in my early age. First 3 decades in this country, the international media, even the local media, Southeast regional media was showing that Bangladesh is a flooded country. And there are so many disasters happening every single day. We are not looking into the development. Yes, we had the slower development of first 3 decades, but we have the huge development of the country in this decade. I want to recall the power connectivity of the country. Yes, we had the shortage of power. We have huge number of households. We have huge number of factories and commercial places. So we need the power. Until 2007 or 8, the power was quite low. And it was highly challenging until 2000, I'll say 10 to 12. Now I know that the power becomes almost fully capable to serve the whole country. And it was really tough to start a data center. I personally was not believing the local data center only for this reason, the power outage may happen. I was looking into the Pier 1 in Canada and US, and I was looking into the net elegant for my service. And later I met with Ahmed Bhai, who has started the first private data center in the country. And it was really struggling for him to find out the professionals to build that, to manage that, even the power connectivity, even the building designs and building everything was really tough. I want to hear those things and to show the challenges he faced in the developing the data center. Please, Ahmed Bhai, it is to you.
Thank you. I would like to thank, of course, W.Media and Athira herself, and the great keynote speech by Bikram Kumar Ghosh, which was always good to hear these facts, which is how, as Russell Bhai said, we're a flooded country for 30 years, and suddenly in the last 20 years, we've actually giving the connectivity and information to the citizens. They're representing, the Bangladeshi citizens are representing us much better in social media and showing our growth and development and their energy. Then with the esteemed panel we have here, Shuman Bhai, I've had the pleasure of meeting a few times, and most critical, many things he's been involved in Bangladesh, which are critical, but the most critical and the thing he touched on correctly, which I think his involvement was the most for Bangladesh, was BDIX. And that is via that connection is when I first met him, via a gentleman called Bill Woodcock, when I happened to be dragged to a meeting at the BDIX office. And that was a transformative thing where finally I think everybody believed because I'll get, sorry, I've done some medication, so my brain's a little foggy. I've had a congestion. Anyway, I'll get to that later. So also, Russell Bhai, I've had the pleasure of working with for ages. When he first took a server in our data center, he couldn't believe. I think he took it just to see if the power would stay on. I think it was a test to see, because in those days, I think we were average running our generator for 7+ hours. And our friends in Malaysia, AIMS Asia Group, when we first started our data center, first, when we were doing the business costing and everything, they said that, oh, how are you going to run it? You're going to be running only on diesel. While in Malaysia, testing the DG was waste of diesel because they never had to actually run it. But soon afterwards, I realized actually having these power cuts were to our advantage because nobody else could keep their generator team 24/7 to run it for the 7-8 hours necessary. So that was actually helped us actually persuade people to get their servers out of their own facilities and into our data center, which was obviously a long process. Then we have Rustan Bhai, who I had not had the pleasure of meeting, but I look forward to working with them because Colo Asia has been a good, healthy, and professional competition. And in Bangladesh, I always believe your reference, your competitor, if it's a good competitor, the industry will work well. Because if they're dirty and damaging competitors, it just destroys the industry. But everybody who doesn't understand something, they compare a Toyota Corolla to a Honda Civic. Then they choose which they prefer, the design, the price, and all of these parameters. They take a link tree connection or a BDCom connection. Then they say, oh, what's the price? What's the package, right? People themselves aren't confident to make their own analysis. But when they do the comparison, that's when they decide. And so having a healthy competitor like Colo Asia is always a pleasure. To I guess answer this very historical question of Colo City's birth, I will just start off by saying the biggest issue I feel this industry and all of us have faced and continue to face is mindset. Mindset is what has made us struggle and made things difficult. Because if in the beginning, everybody thinks I put the server in your house, you're going to steal it, right? The idea of a firewall, a password, all of these things were alien. So it's taken a lot of challenges for us to overcome that. And the reason for that is because I've always felt Bangladesh never had proper system integrators. Bangladesh always had box sellers who, whatever you needed, whatever you wanted, they had a box in their stock which they wanted to sell you, rather than an effective, productive solution. So many business owners became skeptical about that. But just to, I guess, get back to the question, I guess, obviously, I got into data center business because I had the pleasure of living in Boston, where the .com revolution began, and I had a T1 connection in my house in 1996. So so overnight I could have before 12 o'clock noon, I could order something, and the next 12 o'clock I'd have a delivery because the UPS depot there. I had a fast internet connection and the .com revolution. So when I came back to Bangladesh in 2003, I lived in our family compound in Mogbazar, which was actually the black hole of the internet, I used to call it, because being a nearly 10-acre piece of land, no fiber or data connectivity to get into the house. I had to do it. It wasn't, we were not on the road as such. So experience that, I remember the traumas of the dial-up modem, which Shuman Bhai referenced to, because you couldn't even get to the Hotmail login page. So anyway, we've all faced a lot of challenges, including fiber at home. I remember I met with Mainul Bhai once, and after fiber at home launched, he said that everybody said "Amar sathe ashbe," but after it was built, everybody is skeptical and people are not picking up. We're not coming on board with the shared infrastructure. So again, I come back to the word mindset. The mindset should be we are all cooperative because the internet is based on cooperation. The cloud is an image to show fiber connecting with any and every point. You go to Singapore, Singapore doesn't have much to offer, but it's the most connected probably island on earth. Why? Because they have got every fiber optic provider to come there, peer there. We are there getting Google data. Why? We have the population in our country, but we're going over there and sucking in data there, and they're earning, money from us because we have not been able to capitalize. So this mindset is where we need to overcome. I could sit here and blame and say that UPS tax is high, this tax is higher, or these barriers to entry. But that, I've had the pleasure with support of friends and family and people in the community to overcome these challenges. And that's what we do in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, we are, as Kissinger said, we were in a basket case, right? Bangladesh is overcome, and we are here because of these challenges. Our ability, our dynamism is thanks to the challenge. So I do not like to hide behind or blame those challenges as what's limiting us. It's the energy that drives us and makes us hungry to move forward. And with that in mind, I'll also like to thank the government for some of their great policies. When in 2008, I initiated my data center project, in 2009, it went live, as Shuman Bhai correctly mentioned. For 12 months, my data center was empty, right? Because nobody had the confidence. They all liked the idea, but nobody had the confidence of putting the server there. And then the IT head was not sure if he got the server into my data center or chakki thakbe na kina, because the MD will say that, why do I need you? Right? Not understanding that the IT guy is supposed to plan, manage, and deploy the services, not necessarily look at the blinking lights and keep the power on. Right? So these are, as I said, mindset and challenges where now I feel, thanks to 3G, 4G, where let's say an MD of the company lives in Singapore or London 1 week a month, that he knows that I need to access my services wherever I'm in the world. It's not just in the old days Bangladeshi groups where 3-4 floors in one building and the peon will go up and down with a piece of paper and khata for signatures. Now groups are all nationwide, are all international, and that has really changed the mindset of the decision makers, of the banks, of all of these things, getting us all into digital economy and all of these things. So I could say the sad stories of how Kola City came to where we are today. But I think it's a positive story because we have survived. We've, mashallah, done well. And we've gone from, with healthy competition from our competitors, because competition is necessary to keep us alive, us keep vigilant, us keep active. So we've gone from basic cooling and power, reliable cooling and power, to dedicated servers, to one new and other hosting, to now last year we finally launched, after a lot of hard work and fighting with the support and the Dell and Microsoft team, the first Azure Stack Hub in Bangladesh. So an international supported international grade cloud infrastructure has been installed in our data center for us to locally, via the BDIX, via cheap, efficient, cost-effective, low latency connectivity, let people access their content in a flexible environment. So I guess I've been rambling around a bit, so I'll just a step aside and we can move on, I guess.
Thank you, Ahmed bhai. It is wonderful to hear from you. Data center business is not easy. For the audience, this is the hardest business. I'll tell you one story in my life. About 7, 8 years ago, I was visiting a data center in US, Hurricane Electric in Fremont, California. So they were having approximately 30,000 servers over there in the rack, and I have visited that. Beside that, the underground was a parking system. In California, per hour parking is approximately $20 to $60 per hour. And I was asking the CEO that, what is your primary business? It is the parking or it is the data center? The man said, this place is allocated by the government for the data center, but I cannot run the data center without this parking income. So this is real hard business. So we have to understand what it is. I'll call few items that we must have the stable, must be stable: the power, the hardware, the cooling, even the building infrastructure, then finally the security and accessibility of the data center. The people in Bangladesh is still creating the server room inside the factory. This is very bad for the overall ecosystem, and it is hard to manage inside your business house. I think we all should recommend bringing into the central data center, into a center place where you can get the disaster recovery center in other area of the thing. So I see the government having a very good initiative to bring all the data into the national data center or central data center by the private or government entities. So I think we should call all the private entrepreneur, private industrialists to bring their data into the data center. So I'll call Ruslan bhai to say something on these things, how to mitigate this kind of problems, what is happening now, and what kind of initiative you are taking to bring those people into the central data center and its management. Ruslan bhai.
Thank you, Russell bhai, for the question. I think I'd like to start off by first thanking W.Media for putting together this wonderful event. A big thanks to Mr. Bikarna for like a very, very informative presentation. And it's a great honor to be in the same panel as some of the pioneers and some of the other, like, the legends of this particular industry. So thank you everyone for having me here. I think, yeah, but first of all, I think we have to go into just what an exciting time we are going through right now in the data center business in Bangladesh, because as you said, Ahmed bhai, they had to go through all these early struggles, just convincing them that it makes sense for them to come to the data center. And we went through the similar struggles in our early days as well. But right now, like, because of all that hard work, I think we're on the cusp of a really good boom for the industry. Now, exact numbers are a little bit difficult to get, but we estimate there are somewhere in the region of 5,000 racks that are out there in Bangladesh, in all over the country. But we really, right now, only about 600 to 700 of those racks are in hosted data centers, as you were saying, and which is ridiculous when you think about all the benefits a hosted data center provides, as we were talking about, in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of security, in terms of power backup, just in every which way, the advantages are huge. So this market, like, if we can convert a portion of those right there, there's a huge opportunity for this particular industry. And then when you combine it with the massive growth of the digitization in the country, with the government digitizing all sorts of services and data records, and then when you think about the big growth in the private sector and their use of IT, so your CRM softwares and your ERP softwares and everything in between, over the next few years we can expect, and along with that, if that government directive kind of comes along, that more of our data needs to be hosted in Bangladesh for security and every other purpose, right there, I think there's a great opportunity for this growth. So this obviously brings us a lot of opportunity, but we have to take this on as a challenge. So one of the great ways I think we as in sector, when I look at it as how we are preparing for this big growth of opportunity, I think a great way we are doing it right now is by building capacity, which is first and foremost. Right now, there are about 17 data centers that are operating all over the country. when you compare to maybe some place like India or something, that may seem small. But when you compare to Bangladesh, maybe even 2 or 3 years ago, that's a big increase. So that represents a success right there in building the capacity to deal with the upcoming demand. And I think within that, there's another positive, which is it's the kind of investment that we've been able to bring in. Because as Imad Bhai said, good competition, healthy competition, new competition is very important. So this increase that has happened in capacity, it didn't just come from existing data centers like Imad Bhai and us, like, who've been here for a little while, and us investing. We've also been actually successfully be able to invest new investors into the sector. A lot of them were operating in a closely related business, maybe in IT, maybe in telecommunications, but they are now making that transition. So good quality competitors it gives our consumers a lot more choice. With more quality data centers, it helps establish the trust in the industry. So in that way, I think building capacity and being able to attract new players into the business, I think that's a great way that we are kind of preparing to take on the challenge that is coming up ahead for us. I think another good way that this sector is kind of preparing, and in a very organic way for this, is the data centers are not clustered in one particular area. Given that there's a huge hub of all businesses, because our capital is here and we never really went through a big decentralization process, there's a big hub, there's always going to be a big demand in Dhaka and around Dhaka. That is a given. But I think over the last few years, if you look at the economic development of Bangladesh, the government has very, very proactively tried to make the economic growth more inclusive. They have tried to make sure that the benefits of our economic growth, which is, we've talked about how fast we're growing, the economic growth of it reaches to all parts of the country. And the way they have done it is by building infrastructure. So they built road and network connectivity all over the country. They've taken gas pipeline connectivities to let businesses kind of expand in other parts of the country. The power plants, essential for manufacturing or any other business, they have been set up in all different parts of the country. And they've also set up economic zones and export processing zones in different parts of the country. So because the economic growth is happening all over the country, there's growth in requirement for your ERM softwares, your ERP software, CRM softwares, and all these kind of things. These will also take place all over the country. And these customers will also demand, quick service with very, very short lag times and so on. So it would, and it's great to see that now the data centers are not clustered. We have data centers now, not only in Dhaka, but also in Joshore, in Chittagong, in Kaliakot, and Sylhet. So I think that's a positive development and good preparation for the future, because demand will come from all over the country for your increase in IT services and your mobile banking financial services, like Shuman Bhai was saying just earlier. So I think that's another way the industry has kind of just organically prepared for the challenge. And I think another really good positive thing for us is the new wave of investments that is coming into the sector. What we have seen is there's a big increase in focus in quality as well, in terms of service, in terms of certifications. So just to kind of go, this wasn't too long ago, but when we got the Polo Asia got their Bhutan data center certified, there was a government data center that was tier 3 certified, but we were the first one in the private sector. And then very quickly, we saw quite a few of our competitors follow, and they also got tier 3 certifications. And now these things are kind of becoming more standard. And it's not just tier certification as well. We're also seeing more and more data centers getting ISO 9001, ISO 27001, PCI DSS certification. So it's a big indicator that they're not just, yes, with that many new investments, some are going to be not up to the standard, but more and more of them are becoming more focused on quality and certification. And they're setting the bar high, which is important, because that's the way we're going to build the trust and attract more and more and get those big share of both the growth and the existing operators to move from their in-house data centers to us. So I think all these are great ways in which this sector has kind of taken really big positive steps towards getting ready for the opportunity that is coming up. And I think if we get some of the more, like some of the regulations that come along, I think there's going to be even more growth and more attraction of investment into the sector. If the data boundary rules do come in, if the government does insist on keeping data locally inside Bangladesh's boundary, that will, I think, it will be a huge boost. I think there's some other steps that can be taken, because right now, I think as an industry, there's no standards that are being set right now. I think, which means good good competition, as Imad Bhai was saying, is when they and I, we are trying to hold to the standard, but there's also loads of like small ones that are mushrooming all over the place. And for instance, if somebody who's using data for the first time ends up in one of those places, it can do a tremendous amount of damage, ruining kind of the trust in the sector. So if the government, I think if we can set up some policies in terms of what kind of certifications, what kind of properties on which they can build the data centers and certain requirements, if we can hold a standard for the industry, that is a step that we can take to raise the overall standard of the industry. The tax-free and IT-enabled services, for example, like we know that the regulation is out there, but as a company, personally, we have applied for it, but we're still yet to kind of get those benefits. So I think if those things can be, fast forwarded a little bit, that again will be it will further boost our capacity to deal with the need. Power, and it's amazing to hear like somebody who's been in the industry for so long, they're like, oh yeah, power was such a problem and so on. Yes, the power capacity has increased, as Russell Bhai was saying, but getting connected to it, I think, is just as difficult now as it was like 10 years ago. The red tape that's involved, the amount of time it takes. So if those can be made a little bit easier, it would definitely help us establish these data centers even faster. And again, entity and connectivity, the amount of network has increased big time in the last few years. So that's a positive side. But when we try to get connected, we are still having to pay and kind of, reach out to them. And again, there seems to be quite a bit of red tape involved in that particular process as well. If that can be expedited, set some, call it like some service standards that like, you have to respond within a certain amount of time. These are all things that will help us better prepare for the challenges. And maybe one of the biggest ones, I think one of the last ones maybe, and then I'll let somebody else speak, is the need for human resources. And whenever an industry just increases that fast, there's going to be a shortage of good qualified labor and ones who are like, has all the proper certifications to help run and so on. So we're doing a lot of work, kind of like, I think all companies are training a lot of people internally and trying to get them to train to kind of build up that capacity. But it was also a positive sign to hear Bikarna kind of speak about how the government is setting up a lot of training institutes. So maybe something we can bring to his attention that kind of say, hey, maybe in some of the education programs you guys are setting up, include the kind of getting certification and training needed to help operate some of these data center facilities, because that's another sector of the IT. It's not just software development and so on. I think that's another, because we are going very fast. Access to good human resource would definitely be a huge help for all of us as well. So yeah, thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Ruslan Bhai, for the wonderful discussion on these points. I'd like to call two items in this. One is, I think we need to aware the software companies to make more SaaS is the data center is stable, and they should not go for the international data centers. They can come up to the local data center to serve the local users. So they will have the lower latency, they will get the better support. Number two thing is, I think we should request government to give us the separate power connectivity, and that should have a different rate of the utility. Otherwise, it will be hard to serve the whole nation by the data center. These 2 points are from me. I have a big concern on the data center industry. I'd like to go for Shumon Bhai to talk about this, that e-waste management or e-recycling. Within next 10 years, there will have a lot of equipment will be damaged, and how Bangladesh is preparing to handle this e-waste. I think Shumon Bhai, please explain this thing to us.
Thank you very much. Very important questions. But before going to that, I can see a question on the screen towards me. That Mr. Saiful Islam from Chittagong, he's asking that we still have issue with BDIX connectivity in different cities of the country. I'm from the city of Chittagong. We are still suffering for interconnectivity between ISPs service provider. Is there any central effort to connect all the ISPs service provider via an IX? So thank you very much. Very important question, Mr. Saiful. But I want to mention you that BDIX already established a second facility in Chittagong. So Chittagong ISPs can peer there, and that will help to boost Chittagong local economy development. So there is an effort from the BDIX side. They established the POP there. You can connect there. And there is a misconception that everybody has to connect to Dhaka in a IX. That is possible. Everybody can connect, but you have to come up to Dhaka. But IX to IX interconnection is not a really very good idea, because it creates a lot of other problem actually, competition with the other stakeholders. So nowhere actually IX connects with other, like M6 have pop in Hong Kong, but it is not connected with the Amsterdam one, because then actually they will be in direct conflict with all the transport carrier in the globe. So IX is basically to keep local traffic local. So BDX have pop in Chittagong, and the other IX also coming up. So there, I hope that they will go to other cities so that every city has their local internet economy. That's how actually we do decentralize. Data center are going distributed. So that's how internet exchange point and other facilities also should go distributed. That's how actually overall country evolves. So going back to the questions came to me, that the EOS management, it is a big time challenge actually, not for only us, but it is a global challenge. And I'm sure that the company entered IT in the last 20 years, everybody has a huge stockpile of servers, PCs, switches, routers, and we don't know how to dispose that. And so far there are some sporadic effort by some organization individuals to take it and make a good use of it actually, and not hampering the environment. But there is no organized effort on the government side. There's no major initiative or policy development. But I like to mention you that a few individuals in the industry, we actually sit together and we are trying to register an organization, that EOS Management Forum, basically to lobbying with the government and to create an awareness and to find a way, because EOS management could be another good business actually. Again, it is something that doesn't give you revenue from the very day, like you have to slow start, like data center. The waiting time we have heard from Ahmed Bhai and Ruslan Bhai. So this is something somebody had to start. So what we are trying to create an awareness for the government, for the industry, and for the new entrepreneurs to jump into this business, so that we can create an ecosystem to manage the EOS. So and probably in September timeframe, there is a plan to have a kind of a workshop and seminar, bringing in all the stakeholders together. That's how we can actually work together to manage the EOS in Bangladesh. So far, there's a development I know actually. And along with that, what just Ruslan was mentioning, that the transmission network, that is one of the key components of overall development. I'm happy to say that at this moment, Bangladesh, all the districts are connected with multiple 100 gigs of bandwidth. Even up to union level, we have 10 gigs of connectivity in many unions. So that is a significant development in terms of ICT infrastructure in Bangladesh. Still, there are some missing areas, and probably they will be covered soon by the private and government initiatives. So infrastructure-wise, I think we are really going in good shape. Now the question comes that how the newer digital services is coming up, and how actually we are utilizing this transport infrastructure, data center infrastructure, to make it as a services that really helps our people, that really the true digital or smart Bangladesh we're talking about, to reach there. Now we need to incorporate services that really benefit our users. And it's not only the private business I'm talking about, it has to be the government services, like your passport, your birth registration, your driving license registration, your income tax, all this government services. It has to be digitized. It has to be smart. Then actually, we'll see new growth of data center and other areas. And probably I am going beyond the questions. Sorry about that, but not explaining myself not to talk about that. Like Ruslan was talking about the content and other thing, and data localization. And with that, I must mention one thing, that nowadays the content we're using in Bangladesh, at least 70 to 80% are coming from abroad, not locally hosted. And if we really see the growth, the efficiency of the service, and along with that, the growth of data center, those contents should come and reside in Bangladesh, so that actually user will get faster access, better access with a reduced cost, because that will reduce significant amount of internet transit we are purchasing now, which we can use for other purposes as well. So in that regards, What I think that there is some policy reform is required, because the major carriers are kind of skeptical about coming to Bangladesh because of some of the laws, regulations, or the stability of the ICT regulations. So probably we need to work together, and we talk with the government, we need to talk with the other stakeholders, considering national security and other issue, and then national development issue. This is something we need to focus. If we really see the data center growth and ICT development, probably that is something we need to consider as well. Thank you very much from my side.
Thank you, Shuman Bhai.
I would like to take, if I can add just a little point to Shuman Bhai's point about the benefits of bringing the data to locally. I think one of the other thing is it's also going to help. It's not just going to help data centers, but I think it's also going to help all the IT and software service providers improve their quality of service. Because when I was, for example, one of my other entities, I was trying to get a local software service provider. Like most software service providers, their data was hosted in Singapore. And one of the things that caused us a lot of pain and grief was just how long the latency was, because they were accessing, for every single transaction, they were accessing the data all the way in Singapore and bringing it back. If we can bring it to, for example, my facility was based in Gazipur. So if there was a data center hosted, let's say out of Kaliapur, that service would be so much faster. And it would in turn help their customer satisfaction. It would help us operate faster. So I think it's absolutely essential, not from the security standpoint, from the loss of foreign currency standpoint, but also for increasing quality of service, which in turn helps the adoption of digitization. So just wanted to add a little bit to that one.
Ruslan bhai, there is a question from the Mr. Firoz Alam, if you can take this one.
Morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. When the business sector in our country continues to grow stage, then the competition, financial, etc., like business starts creating problems. In that case, I hope your opinion on how we can oversearch that problems. Okay, so I think he's talking about the price competition that's going on in this particular sector. So I think that's the reality of any sector in Bangladesh. When there's a lot of competition, there's going to be very fierce and intense price competition. I don't think it's necessarily a negative, because the more competition there is, it gives the consumer more choices. But I think what we have to work towards is, as I said before, having some standards, as in you cannot set up a data center in the middle of in the middle of a residential area in that campus where they can, cut costs, but it also brings in security concerns. So I think some regulations on minimal standards they need to meet, that will help that will make sure that everybody at least meets a certain standard. And I think beyond that, I think a challenge, a lot of it will come, the owners will have to come to us as data center service providers in communicating with the client that, listen, this is what makes it. We are spending on all these, multiple layers of power redundancy in this non-flammable kind of fire retardant system, and all these, the security, the physical security elements of it. So I think a lot of the challenges for us to communicate and convince the customer that why the quality of our service is different from that, that XYZ kind of service provider. But I think if this is a platform where a lot of our potential or existing customers are, I think it's also a good opportunity to communicate with them that we often find that again, Bangladesh and I think India and some of our neighboring countries as well, they're very price sensitive generally at the best of times. But I think sometimes we get this, and again, not only this one, we are also a cloud service provider. Even in this one, we see that when a local consumer is going abroad, if they're getting a data center in Singapore, if they're getting a cloud service in Singapore, their willingness to pay is a lot higher. But when we are giving the service locally for the exact same service, I think the willingness to pay for some reason just goes down. But I think the service is very comparable, because I think Imad Bhai and for us, we can both, I think, probably say, we've been in business personally for about 12 years. We haven't had a single minute of downtime. We've had a single security issue. So the service has been absolutely best quality and has had no interruptions.
Sorry for the interruption. We have very few minutes left. I have so many questions again left to you, all of you, why the data center companies are not in the public market, and why there are many other issues to discuss about the hardware companies, why they are not being built. But I'd like to thank all of our audience to join and hear the discussion. I'd like to thank W.Media to set up this kind of wonderful event in this region. That's why we can hear, we can discuss. I'd like to hand over the microphone to Athira to close up the things.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Russell. Thank you, Mr. Imad. Thank you, Mr. Russell. Thank you, Shivan sir, for your valuable contributions. Like Mr. Russell said, there are too many Q&A questions coming in. We will be taking up every one of them. So the delegates, the audience, please be reassured. We will be sending these questions to every one of you. And if there are targeted questions, we'll be sending that across, and you will be receiving the responses from these guys, everyone, pretty soon. So all the Q&As would be answered. So do not worry about it. Distinguished panelists, we will be sending the Q&As to you, and you can respond to the audience queries and send us back the responses. We'll be sharing the same with the delegates. Thank you so much for everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.